Hello, welcome to Andy Tales. After watching the video, make sure there's no one else in the room. Don't forget to write your city and the time in the comments.
The doll that watched us bleed. Imagine cleaning an old house and hearing a child's laugh, except you're alone, and the only other thing in the room is a doll with eyes that seem to bleed into your soul. That's what happened to me and my friend Jason, and it's a nightmare we can't escape. A few years ago, my friend Jason and I were just kids, scraping by in high school with empty pockets and big dreams. Money was tight. My parents were struggling after Dad lost his job, and Jason's family relied on his older brother's odd jobs. So when Mr. Johnson, a reclusive old man from the edge of town, offered us a job cleaning his decrepit house after school, we jumped at the chance. "Good money," he'd said, his voice a dry rasp, his gray eyes darting away as if hiding something. We didn't ask questions. We needed the cash for new shoes, a movie ticket, anything to feel normal. Little did we know, that house wasn't just old. It was a prison for something that had been waiting for us. The first day we stepped inside, the air hit me like a punch to the chest, cold, damp, and thick with a stench that made my stomach turn. It was mold, sure, but beneath it was something sharper, metallic, like blood left to rust in the sun. The house loomed around us, its walls sagging with age, the windows clouded with grime, letting in only slivers of gray light. Dust coated every surface, a gray film that clung to our hands, and cobwebs hung like ghostly veils, swaying slightly as if stirred by an unseen breath. Jason and I exchanged a glance, our teenage bravado kicking in. "Just an old creep's junk pile," he muttered, forcing a laugh. I nodded, but a chill ran down my spine, settling in my bones, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the house was watching us, its silence heavier than it should have been. We rolled up our sleeves and got to work, armed with brooms, rags, and a bucket of soapy water. The first few hours were mundane, sweeping floors, wiping shelves, dodging spiderwebs that stuck to our faces like sticky fingers. But as we moved deeper into the house, the air grew colder, the metallic smell stronger, and the silence broke with faint creaks, like the house stretching its limbs. In the living room, cluttered with faded furniture and cracked picture frames, something caught my eye. A doll perched on an old, dusty shelf. It wasn't like the toys we knew. Its porcelain face was a web of jagged cracks, its eyes not glass but polished obsidian, black and bottomless, reflecting our startled faces as we approached. Its dress, once white, was tattered and stained with rust-colored streaks that glistened wetly in the dim light, too vivid to be mere age. "Creepy?" Jason whispered, his voice barely audible, his hand tightening on his broom. I nodded, my throat dry, feeling those obsidian eyes track us as we moved, a weight that pressed against my chest. We tried to ignore it, focusing on the task, but the house wouldn't let us forget. Over the next few days, strange things started happening. A broom I'd leaned against the wall fell with a clatter, though the floor was level. A rag I'd left on a table appeared on the floor, twisted into a knot. Whispers echoed through the empty halls, soft, disjointed, like voices arguing in a language we couldn't grasp, the sound scraping against my ears. At first, we laughed it off, blaming drafts or our tired minds, but the dread grew, a knot in my stomach that wouldn't untie. One afternoon, as we scrubbed the kitchen, a glass jar shattered on its own, the shards skittering across the floor toward the living room, as if drawn by something. Jason's face paled. "This place isn't right," he said, his voice shaking. I agreed, but we needed the money, so we kept going, the doll's gaze burning into my back every time I passed. Then came the evening that changed everything. We were finishing up, the sun dipping below the horizon, casting long shadows through the grimy windows. The air was frigid, my breath fogging in faint wisps, and the metallic smell had intensified, now mixed with something rancid, like rotting meat left in the heat. As we gathered our things, a soft giggle floated from the living room, high-pitched, warped, like a child's laugh twisted into something sinister. Jason froze, his eyes wide, his broom slipping from his hands. "Did you hear that?" he hissed, his voice trembling. My heart hammered against my ribs as I nodded, the sound echoing in my skull. Together, we crept toward the source, our footsteps thudding on the creaking floorboards, the house groaning as if protesting our approach. In the living room, the doll awaited us, but it had changed. Its cracked porcelain face was contorted into a sinister grin, the obsidian eyes now glowing a faint, pulsing red, like embers in a dying fire. The rust-colored stains on its dress seemed to shimmer, fresh blood seeping from the cracks, dripping onto the shelf with a sizzle that burned tiny holes in the wood. The air thickened, the rancid smell choking me, and a whisper clawed into my mind. "You shouldn't have touched my house." Its voice a guttural rasp that felt like fingers brushing my brain. I stumbled back, my arm burning, and saw 3 deep scratches oozing blood, as if invisible claws had raked my skin, the pain sharp and cold. Jason lunged forward, his hands trembling as he grabbed the doll, his face a mask of terror. The moment his fingers closed around it, a scream erupted, shrill, metallic, like a blade scraping bone, shaking the walls until dust rained from the ceiling. The floorboards cracked beneath us, splitting with wet snaps, and the windows rattled, the glass fracturing into spiderweb patterns. The air turned icy, my breath fogging in panicked bursts, and the doll's head twisted toward me with a sickening crack, its bloody grin widening. "You're mine now," it hissed, and the room spun, the shadows stretching like hands reaching for us. Just then, Mr. Johnson burst in, his face ashen, his eyes wild with panic. "What did you do?" he demanded, his voice a terrified rasp. I pointed at the doll, my hand shaking, blood dripping from my scratches onto the floor. His gaze followed, and he staggered back, pulling a small wooden box from his coat with trembling hands. "This is why I hired you," he whispered, his voice breaking. He opened the box, revealing a vial of dark, viscous liquid that reeked of decay and sulfur. Muttering in a guttural, ancient tongue, he poured the liquid over the doll. The red glow faded, the grin softened, and the air lightened, the whispers dying into silence. But the scratches on my arm throbbed, the skin around them turning black, a mark that wouldn't heal. Mr. Johnson sank into a chair, his hands still shaking. "That doll holds the spirit of a girl who died here," he said, his voice hollow. "Her name was Margaret. Decades ago, her family performed a ritual to bind her soul to the doll after she was murdered. Slashed open in this very room, her blood soaking the floor. I hired you to stir her, hoping to end her torment. But you've woken her fully now." His eyes met mine, heavy with guilt. "She'll never let you go." We fled that night, vowing never to return. But the nightmare didn't end. The scratches festered, black veins spreading under my skin, and every night, I hear that giggle, faint, cruel, seeping through my walls. Sometimes, I wake to find my bedroom door ajar, the air thick with that metallic stench, and I feel those obsidian eyes watching from the shadows, waiting. Jason stopped talking to me after he started seeing her too. Her figure in his mirror, her whisper in his ear. We thought we escaped, but Margaret's doll is still out there, and I know she's coming for us. Her bloody grin etched into my dreams forever. Ella's whisper in the dark. What if the doll you found in your attic knows your name and whispers it every night, begging you to set her free, only to drag you into her darkness. I found such a doll. Her name was Ella, and she nearly took everything I loved. In the spring of 2001, my family was on the verge of a fresh start. We were moving from our cramped, creaky house in a small Australian town to a bigger place in the city, a chance for my parents to rebuild after years of financial strain. I was 16, restless, and itching for the move, but my mother had one last task for me before we left: sort through the attic and decide what to keep. The attic had always been a place I avoided, a shadowed, musty space that seemed to swallow light and sound, its air thick with the smell of mildew and something faintly sweet, like rotting fruit. But I couldn't say no to Mum, not when her eyes were so tired, her voice so hopeful. So, with a flashlight in hand and a knot of unease in my stomach, I climbed the narrow stairs, the wood groaning under my weight like a warning. The attic was a maze of forgotten things: cardboard boxes sagging with damp, old furniture draped in moth-eaten sheets, and a carpet of dust that puffed into the air with every step, catching in my throat. The air was stifling, heavy with that sickly sweet scent, now mixed with the sharp tang of decay, as if something had died up here long ago and never been found. I started digging through the boxes, my flashlight beams slicing through the gloom, revealing relics of our past. Faded photo albums, my sister's broken toys, Dad's old work boots, their leather cracked and peeling. Most of it was junk, destined for the trash, but I lingered, a strange pull keeping me there, as if the attic itself wanted me to stay. Then I saw it, a box unlike the others, tucked behind a pile of moldy suitcases, its wood carved with intricate floral patterns, the varnish still gleaming despite the years. It was small, no bigger than a shoebox, and strangely warm to the touch, as if it had been sitting in the sun, though the attic was cold as a tomb. My fingers hesitated over the lid, a chill creeping up my spine, but curiosity won out. I lifted it, and there she was, a porcelain doll, her face a map of hairline cracks, her eyes not glass but polished jade, a deep, unyielding green that seemed to shimmer with an inner light. Her dress was a faded lavender, frayed at the edges, and her lips were painted a faint pink, curled into a neutral expression that somehow felt expectant, as if she were waiting for me to speak. At her base, an engraving caught the light. Ella, 1978. The air shifted, a cold draft swirling around me, and I swore I heard a whisper. My name, Thomas? Spoken so softly it might have been the wind, but the attic windows were sealed shut. I slammed the box shut, my heart pounding, the whisper echoing in my ears. My flashlight flickered, the beam dimming for a moment, and the sweet smell turned sour, like rotting flowers, making my stomach churn. I slid the box back into the shadows, telling myself I'd imagined it, that the attic was playing tricks on my nerves. But that night, sleep wouldn't come. I lay in bed, the house silent save for the creak of settling wood, until I heard it. Footsteps in the hallway, slow and deliberate, the sound of bare feet on hardwood, though my parents and sister were asleep. I sat up, my breath shallow, listening as the steps paused outside my door, the air growing colder, the smell of rotting flowers seeping under the gap. Then a whisper, "Thomas, come back." My blood ran cold, and I stayed frozen until dawn, the footsteps fading as the first light crept through my window. The next morning, I found my bedroom drawers open, my watch, usually on my nightstand, now on the kitchen counter, its hands frozen at 3:33, the exact time I'd woken to the footsteps. I told my parents, my voice trembling, but they brushed it off. "Moving's stressful, Thomas," Mum said, her smile strained. "You're just tired." Dad nodded, distracted, his mind on the move. But the house felt different now, its silence oppressive, the air heavy with that sour smell. now mixed with something metallic, like old blood. Over the next few days, things escalated. My sister, Lily, only 8, started complaining of nightmares. Dreams of a green-eyed girl who whispered her name, begging her to play. Our dog, Max, refused to go near the attic stairs, growling at the door, his hackles raised. I saw her too, a dark silhouette at the edge of my vision, her jade eyes glinting in the moonlight through my window, her whisper growing clearer each night. Thomas, set me free. I couldn't ignore it anymore. Desperate for answers, I went to Mr. Harris, an old man 2 houses down who'd lived in the town his whole life. His house was a weathered shack, hidden behind overgrown bushes, the air inside thick with the smell of pipe smoke and old books, the walls lined with shelves of yellow journals. I told him everything: the doll, the footsteps, the whispers, Lily's dreams. When I mentioned the engraving, Ella, 1978, his face darkened, his hands trembling as he set down his pipe. "That doll isn't something you should have touched," he said, his voice low, almost a growl. He leaned back in his chair, the shadows deepening around him, and told me about Ella, a girl from the 1800s, shunned by the town for her strange abilities. They called her a witch, blamed her for failed crops, sick children. One night, a mob dragged her from her home, burned her alive in the woods, and her mother, a grieving seamstress, bound her spirit to the doll, hoping to keep her safe. But Ella's rage twisted the binding, turning the doll into a vessel of vengeance. "Destroy it," Mr. Harris warned, his eyes hard, "before she takes you all." I returned home, my stomach a pit of dread, and pleaded with my parents. I showed them the open drawers, the watch, Lily's tear-streaked face as she whispered about the green-eyed girl. Mum's hands shook as she held Lily close, and Dad's jaw tightened, his disbelief crumbling. "We'll do it tonight," he said finally, his voice grim. We gathered tools, hammers, a crowbar, anything heavy, and climbed to the attic, the air heavier than ever, the smell of decay so strong I gagged, my eyes watering. The box was waiting, its lid ajar, though I'd closed it tight. Ella sat inside, tilted toward us, her jade eyes glowing brighter, the cracks in her face now oozing a black, tar-like substance that dripped onto the floor, hissing as it burned tiny holes in the wood. The air buzzed with a low hum, like a swarm of insects, and the temperature dropped, our breaths fogging in the dim light of our flashlight. Before we could move, a gust of wind slammed the attic door shut, the lock clicking with a finality that made my heart sink. The flashlight flickered, then died, plunging us into near darkness. The only light coming from Ella's glowing eyes, casting sickly green shadows on the walls. "Thomas?" Her voice rasped, louder now, a chorus of whispers overlapping. "Set me free?" Lily whimpered, clutching Mum's hand, and Max, who'd followed us up, began to howl, a sound that turned into a yelp as something unseen slammed him against the wall. Dad grabbed the doll, his hands trembling, his face pale. "It's burning," he gasped, the porcelain searing his skin, leaving red welts. He smashed it against the floor, the porcelain shattering with a scream that wasn't human. A wail of fury that shook the attic, the walls cracking, the air vibrating with rage. I grabbed the hammer, my hands slick with sweat, and struck the pieces, black ooze splattering my arms, burning like acid, the smell of charred flesh mixing with the decay. Mum joined in, her sobs mingling with the hum, and we pounded until the doll was nothing but shards, the glow fading, the whispers dying into silence. We gathered the pieces, the ooze still burning, and buried them deep behind the shed, the ground cold and unyielding, the night air thick with the scent of wet earth and blood. The house felt lighter after that. No more footsteps, no whispers, No nightmares for Lily. We moved a few weeks later, leaving the past behind, or so I thought. But Ella didn't let go. Months later, in our new city house, I found my watch on the kitchen counter, its hands frozen at 3:33, the same time I'd heard her whispers. The air carried that faint smell of rotting flowers, and Lily started drawing pictures of a green-eyed girl, her crayons pressing so hard the paper tore. Max growls at shadows now, his eyes darting to corners where nothing should be. Some nights, when the house is quiet, I hear my name whispered in the dark. Thomas, you can't leave me. I check my windows, my doors, but I know Ella's jade eyes are out there, glowing in the shadows. Her voice a promise that she'll never stop calling, waiting for me to set her free. The doll that sang my name. Have you ever heard a doll sing your name in the dead of night? Its voice echoing through your house like a twisted lullaby? I have, and when I opened the door to see who was calling, I wished I'd never woken up. I just turned 30 when I moved into my first real home. A small, weathered house on the edge of town, tucked between an overgrown lot and a stretch of dense woods that seemed to swallow the sunlight. The house wasn't much to look at. Its clapboard siding was peeling, the roof sagged like a tired old man, and the windows rattled in their frames even on windless days. But I loved it. After years of cramped apartments and noisy neighbors, this place was mine. A fixer-upper I could shape into something new. A fresh start after a messy breakup that left me craving solitude. The uneven floors creaked with every step. The faded wallpaper peeled at the edges, curling like dead leaves, and the air carried a faint smell of mildew that no amount of cleaning could erase. Still, I saw potential in its bones, a history I could make my own. I didn't know then that the house had a history of its own, one that didn't want to be forgotten. The first few nights were quiet, save for the usual sounds of an old house settling. The groan of pipes, the creak of wood, the occasional skitter of a mouse in the walls. I spent my evenings sanding floors, painting walls, and unpacking boxes, the hum of a portable radio keeping me company as I worked. But a week in, I woke to a sound that didn't belong, slow, heavy footsteps pacing just outside my bedroom door, back and forth, deliberate, like someone deep in thought, weighing a decision that made my skin crawl. I sat up, my heart thudding, the room suddenly colder, the air thick with a faint, acrid smell, like burnt hair. I told myself it was nothing, the house adjusting to the cool night air, maybe a stray cat on the porch, but the rhythm was too human, too purposeful. I grabbed the baseball bat I kept under my bed and crept to the door, my hand trembling as I turned the knob. The hallway was empty, the footsteps gone, but the smell lingered, and the shadows seemed to cling to the walls, darker than they should have been. I tried to shake it off, blaming exhaustion, but the house wouldn't let me forget. The next day, I decided to tackle the attic, a cluttered space I'd been avoiding, its trapdoor sticking as if it didn't want to open. The air up there was stale, heavy with the scent of dust and something sharper, like scorched metal, the floorboards sagging under my weight. Boxes and old furniture were piled haphazardly, their shapes distorted in the dim light of my flashlight, casting long, jagged shadows that seemed to move when I wasn't looking. I started sorting through the mess, finding relics of the previous owners. A cracked mirror, a box of yellowed letters, a child's tricycle missing a wheel, its paint chipped and faded. Then, behind a pile of rotting suitcases, I found a box, small, wooden, its surface scratched and faded, the lid etched with faint, spiraling runes that seemed to shimmer under the light, as if alive. I pried it open, my fingers tingling with a strange heat, and inside, wrapped in layers of faded cloth, was a doll. She was porcelain, her face cracked at the edges, her tattered blue dress stained with dark, oily spots that glistened like fresh ink. Her eyes were glass, but etched with the same spiraling runes as the box, tiny and intricate, shifting and swirling when I tilted her, making me dizzy, as if they were pulling me in. A faint hum emanated from her, low and dissonant, like a music box stuck on a broken note, the sound vibrating in my chest. The air around her smelled of ash, sharp and bitter, and the temperature dropped, my breath fogging in the dim light. I should have thrown her out right then, but something stopped me. A pull, a whisper in my mind. Keep me? I couldn't explain it, but I brought her downstairs, setting her on the kitchen counter, her rune-etched eyes staring just past me, unblinking, aware. That's when the strangeness began. Keys I'd left on the hook vanished, only to appear in drawers I hadn't opened, their metal cold to the touch, as if they'd been submerged in ice. The TV turned on at 3 a.m., blaring static that hissed with faint whispers. Words I couldn't make out but felt in my bones. Daniel, Daniel? The doll moved, first to the top of the stairs, her head tilted as if listening to something I couldn't hear, then to the bathroom counter, her runes glowing faintly in the dark, the hum growing louder, a melody now, a twisted lullaby that made my head ache. Each time I found her, the smell of ash grew stronger, burning my throat, and the air turned colder, the house creaking as if something heavy were pacing above me. I tried to rationalize it. A prank, a squatter, anything, but deep down, I knew it was her. One night, I woke to the footsteps again. Heavier, slower, no longer pacing but approaching, each step a deliberate thud that shook the floorboards. I lay still, my breath shallow, sweat beading on my forehead despite the chill, as the steps stopped right outside my door. The smell of ash was overpowering now, mixed with something metallic, like blood, and the hum filled the air, louder, clearer. A song that formed words, Daniel, Daniel, come play. Then a knock, steady, measured, not asking for entry but demanding it, the door frame rattling with each blow. The voice sang again, high-pitched, flat, like a broken music box. Daniel, open the door. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst, but against every instinct screaming at me to stay put, I stood, my legs shaking, and reached for the handle. The moment my fingers brushed the knob, the knocking grew frantic, the door shaking violently, the hum turning into a screech that made my ears ring. I swung the door open, the hallway dark and empty, until I looked down. The doll sat in the middle of the floor, her legs splayed awkwardly, her rune-etched eyes glowing brighter, a sickly yellow that pulsed like a heartbeat. The hum was a full song now. Daniel, come play, come play. Her painted mouth had changed, stretched into a jagged, uneven smile, the cracks in her face oozing a black, viscous liquid that dripped onto the floor, hissing as it burned tiny holes in the wood. The air crackled with static, the smell of ash and blood choking me, and my arm burned. Runes, identical to hers, carved into my skin, glowing yellow, searing with a cold that made my fingers numb. I stumbled back, tripping over my own feet, and crashed into the dresser, the pain in my arm spreading, the runes pulsing in time with her eyes. You can't leave me, Daniel, her voice rasped, and the hallway lights flickered, the shadows stretching, forming shapes. Hands, claws, reaching for me. Panicked, I grabbed a glass paperweight from my nightstand and hurled it at her. The porcelain shattering with a scream that shook the walls, the black liquid splattering across the floor, burning where it touched. But the shards twitched, scraping across the wood, the runes still glowing, the pieces dragging themselves together, reforming her face, her smile wider, her voice a hiss. Play with me. I grabbed a heavy book, an old atlas left by the previous owners, and slammed it down again and again until the pieces stopped moving, the runes fading to black, the hum dying into silence. My chest heaved, my arm throbbing, the runes on my skin now a dull scar, the air still thick with the smell of ash. I swept the shards into a metal tin, drove to the edge of the woods, and buried them deep, the ground cold and unyielding, the night silence save for the rustle of leaves. The house felt empty when I returned, the footsteps gone, the TV silent, the air lighter. I thought it was over, but it wasn't. A week later, I found my keys on the kitchen counter, the metal etched with faint, spiraling runes, glowing softly in the dark. The smell of ash lingers in my house now, faint but constant, and the woods behind my property hum at night, a low, dissonant melody that forms my name. Daniel, come play. I've started seeing her in the shadows, her silhouette at the edge of the trees, her glowing eyes watching from the darkness, her jagged smile a promise. I don't go near the woods anymore, but I know she's waiting, her song growing louder each night, calling me to play a game I'll never win. Before we end tonight's terrifying tales, a quick reminder. If you felt a chill from these haunted dolls, hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon to stay updated with our upcoming scary stories. Share these stories with your friends and family. Maybe they've got a doll in their attic waiting to whisper their name. Thanks for watching and sleep tight, if you can.